Go.
Welcome back to RC Pilots Lounge. You are here today with your pilot, Ryan. Fasten your safety belts. We are going to have some wild fun and discussion. We're just getting this thing started, and we're going to just let this thing evolve naturally. We've got some guest hosts with us tonight. We've got Steve, RC Jet Dude, and George, Tired Iron Aviation Baker, who's actually hosting this first trial run on his Facebook page, as well as just recording audio on the Anchor app, which I've been driving everybody to. Ultimately, we want to be able to capture this in voice and in video. We're getting things shook down, and we are rolling live right now with these guys. George, Steve, how are you?
Very good. Thank you, Ryan.
Glad to see you made it. We had some technical difficulties, but we worked it out. The doctor said it shouldn't last more than 3 weeks. George, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Just trying to work out all this cameras and audio and stuff. But
you know what? That's the only trouble for working this out, because I know the talking part won't be any trouble at all. So guys, I'm glad to have you here on the RC Pilots Lounge. I want to kind of tell the people who are new here, because it is a new show, what to expect. We're going to talk obviously about like RC airplanes and such. But I think maybe one thing that we're going to focus on that hadn't maybe been done before is to really, this isn't all going to be industry folks. This is going to be everybody, beginner, intermediate, jet, whoever has the story to tell that we want to hear. And I really want everybody to know that this is their show as much as it is ours. My job, I feel like, just as with the videos we make, is to be a bit of a moderator. So if we're doing build videos, I feel like I'm your eyes that couldn't be there looking at it at like a hobby shop, so to say. And we want to do the same thing here. Let everybody in on it. There's multitude of ways to ask questions. George and Steve, you guys can probably see the feed there on Facebook Live. If any questions pop up, I wish I could see it. I can't because I'm tied up here on the laptop and my phone. But if there's anything you want to throw out there, do it. But guys, this show is for all of you. We're going to talk about aviation. We're going to talk about models. And not necessarily just like push them. We're going to talk about how to work them successfully and get the most fun out of the hobby, and really just share the whole community of it all. Which I think you're a great guy here for that.
hey, this is George. Hey, when someone posts on Facebook, it pops up on your video. So while you're talking and somebody submits a question or makes a comment or something, it flashes up right above your head.
That's cool. I wish I could see it, but
You
that's
can watch
great.
the replay.
Yeah, I'll watch the replay, and we'll try to get to everybody. And some of you who already follow me on Instagram and other places know that I've let a call to action kind of slip out, where I want you to go to the Anchor app and download the Anchor app. It's free. Go ahead and favorite the podcast, RC Pilots Lounge. I'm going to have Mike with me when he's available, and always have a guest, whether it's a beginner guy or an industry folk. It doesn't matter. We're going to have a great time, and I got some questions I'm going to ask everybody, and this thing's going to really evolve into a great show, and I really value your time, and thanks for coming over. I'm going to try real hard not to go more than an hour, but hit that Anchor app. You can hit the voice message button and ask a question that we can hear audibly in shows in the future. But for now, we're kind of lo-fi going like this. How many people you got over there at your group, George? Anybody coming over?
Yeah, well, we've got, looks like we've got about 6 on. We got Steve Black, William Horn, Dwayne Folks, Anthony Blair, Brandon Moon just joined.
Outstanding.
So we got about 5 on there. And
well, thanks everybody for showing up. This is kind of interesting to have, I've been playing around with this, and George is being a instrumental help at the beginning here. So, because of George's help, I'm going to let George be the sponsor of our first podcast right now. Tired Iron Aviation is the sponsor. Thanks for all you do in the community and all of that. So, you know what? Let's get into some of these questions I have right away, shall we?
Do it.
Knock it out.
All right, let's go.
And remember, Tired Iron Aviation is not George. George is that's my nickname, Tired Iron. I can tell you later how that came about. But Tired Iron Aviation is all of our guys, not just the guys here in East Tennessee, but the Tired Iron people that are all around the world.
Nice. So what do you want me to call you? Like Squiggly Prince, like formerly known as Tired Iron? Or what do I call you? Do I call you George?
You can call me George.
All right. All right, good. So the Tired Iron, let's talk about Tired Iron Aviation a little bit before we dig into so familiar. What's that?
You froze up for a second.
So did you. So a lot of us are familiar with your story, and you feel free to tell it to us briefly. But what I think is really interesting, and we talk about this all the time on the phone, your group has really taken off, and that's great, and numbers are great. But I think what's the best part about the whole story is what makes a group take off. So if I'm pinpointing some features of y'all's culture over there that's making your group flourish, I would say it's the camaraderie, the helpfulness, the nobody, we talk about this, George, where we want to see the clubs come back to life again, right? So there's this kind of, everybody's got this where the clubs are full of these old-time gas guys that are crotchety, don't welcome electrics, and it keeps a lot of guys away. And I think that's what everybody's been thinking was how it went for a long time, but your club is absolutely different. It doesn't matter if it's helicopter, quad, gas, electric, micro, paper airplane, whatever. You welcome them all with open arms, and there's a lot of sharing going on. Lay into me a little bit on some of that. How'd that start? When did you know? Let's go one question at a time. When did you know you were on to something good over there?
I think the first time was when we had our first fly-in here at the house. Some of the guys, Steve Hodges, RC Jet Dude, that's here with us tonight, he came over and brought a couple of his kids, and we had a few people from our local AMA club, Johnson City Radio Controllers, and we just had a get together where we cooked out. I fixed Low Country Bull, and we flew on the rough grass strip. And I can't remember everybody that was here, but we had quite a few, and it was just a great time. Craig Quillen was here, his wife, a little girl, and his son, and we had a great time, and everybody they were flying everything. Craig he's got a couple big helicopters and some small ones too, and of course everybody flying airplanes and quads and flight test stuff, and we just all we'll take a break, like when Craig flies, we'll all stop and watch it, and somebody's maiden a new plane, we give them the runway, we give them the sky, everybody will come down and we'll watch them, and we'll shoot video of it, and we just try to be courteous. And we have 3 rules here at Tired Iron Aviation. You need to have an AMA membership. That's a wonderful organization to support, and I really like that they become all inclusive. I know some of the old timers they hate it, but it's too bad.
You got to roll. You got to roll with the times.
If you don't have a vision for this new stuff and a respect for it, then your clubs are going to die. We see that all over the country, and the clubs that are flourishing the most are the ones that, you know, have a real active member base that hang out together, and they like to see everybody fly. They don't care if you're flying, you know, paper airplane.
And it's so it sounds like, I mean, you've got a very active club going on, and it sounds like even before that first event, you knew you were on to something, because it sounds like you had a handful of folks there for good times and you know, fellowship. So that's awesome, Steve.
I think it's just a matter of the openness to what everybody is flying. There's an attitude there that's different than in other places. I think a lot of that attitude comes from George caters to everybody's flying desires. He has obstacles for the quad guys, and we've got a slot to run in the trees for the plank flyers that are flying FPV. And you know, it's a wide open space. You can fly just about anything there. But the attitude among the guys, or all the people that come out, has just been, it's like a collective family. It's not a matter of, I don't like with that, I don't fly those, I don't do that. You're not putting anybody down. Nobody's putting anybody down. Everybody's trying to encourage each other, and it's just a good attitude. That's
100% the way it should be. I have one little story that is the exact opposite of the vibe you're putting out. So I hadn't yet moved to South Bend, and I'm from Muncie, which is AMA headquarters. But even when I didn't go there to fly until I'd already really learned how. You know, I beat myself up in soccer fields somewhere to learn on GWS belly landers and stuff, and that's a whole nother show. Anyway, so I'm good enough now where I'm wanting to fly with retracts and wheels. And actually, I remember you guys have a fondness for this one, the Snortin' Bull P-47 from at the time Park Zone, before they were calling it. Is that your earring? Before they were calling it, you know, E-Flight. So Snortin' Bull made a lot of guys feel like they were pretty okay. I mean, you know, low and wide landing gear stance. So long story short, there's an event coming up. There's a bunch of pattern guys over there at Muncie flying, and I'm flying the Snortin' Bull. And dude, I put suspension on it before it was cool, right? So I had suspension on my Snortin' Bull, some of those big balloon like Dubros, you know, the no treads, and I got those guys on there, and I'm just shooting touch and goes at Muncie, which up on the L, not the X, but the L, you know, and I'm sticking at Monkey Pants, and just I'm trying to wear the wheels off. I mean, I'm just touch and go the whole time. I mean, it's beautiful, it's smooth. I'm having a great time. I'm killing it. There's like 3 or 4 pattern dudes who just are waiting to go, you know, up, because they got to have the sky to themselves to do it. They're all that way. Nothing against them. But if it were a place where there was some camaraderie, you would think at least you'd get a high five or a fist bump for, you know, rolling on the wheels enough to get them hot. I mean, that was just fun, right? It's cool. I mean, those guys do a lot of stuff, but you never see them play with the landings, which I think is one of the funnest things. But, you know, at a place like yours, you're going to get fist bumps, high fives, and congratulations. And it's just it's a good environment. So I think we all appreciate what we see out of Tired Iron Aviation and that group of fellas and gals. And I'm glad you got a Facebook page where people can come there and hang out and share everything. When did you, Steve, meet George?
It was around, I think, March, toward the end of March of 2016, I think it was. And I had actually been to the Johnson City RC Club field for a National Model Aviation Day fun fly, but I didn't meet George at that time. I was there to check it out, looking at the runway for some of my jet activity, and stayed a short while and then left. But later, through Hobby Squawk Forum, connected with George, and he said, well, I've got this runway at my house. Why don't you come up and fly sometime? I see you're just down across the border from me. And got to looking at how far to drive and yada, yada. And finally, I went up there, and he had like a spring fun fly going on, and I checked it out and had a blast. The weather was beautiful. Just had a great time. And it's been ever since. I'm up there every chance I get. In fact, I'm going to be up there next weekend. I'm going to be up there this weekend for the National Model Aviation Day Fun Fly at the field, the club field, and then I'm going to be up there next weekend for Hangar Day. So,
let me just stop you and pick back up for sure. Steve, you have experience from way back flying RFs. And George, you're pretty much relatively new to it, right? Like you've been doing it about 750 days, something like that.
A little bit more than that. But,
he's on the accelerated learning program, but I think it's interesting, and I'm guessing and making assumptions that both of you, it doesn't matter. Steve got in a long time ago. I believe composites and were you doing gas helis too?
I did, yeah. I got into it when I was basically in high school. And it was all because of my older brother. He was all into plastic models, and he eventually got into RC, but he never did it like I got into it. But
is that where your techniques come from? Is that where your penchant for weathering and making them your own comes from, those early days, or is that just something that's come upon you?
I've always kind of had a little bit of a knack for figuring things out, but I was the kid who, you know, the relatives would bring broken things to fix.
Nice.
Because of the hobby, I had knowledge of materials, adhesives, and things like that other people just didn't know about. And I was fixing things that people would normally throw in the trash. One of those things that I vividly remember was one of those monkeys that claps the cymbals and has the eyes that go up and down. You see them on horror movies. But my aunt had one, and it broke a cog inside. And so I fixed the cog. I used, styrene plastic and CA to glue it back together. And I fixed this thing, and they were just blown away by it. But that was because of the hobby. But I did that early on.
And the fortitude. I mean, that's what I love about the hobby. So, and you give it credit, which is awesome, but it's you. Like, it's funny, a little bit related, not quite, but it's the tenacity, right? Like you kind of fail. You won't accept anything less than winning.
I try to do things that are new and unique. I try to think about ways to do stuff, and if I think it's something I can't tackle, I won't do it. But I'll give it a try. If I have an idea, I might give it a try. I might test it out and see if I can make it work. But the drag chute on the F4, that's been an awesome mod. It's worked flawlessly, and it looks fantastic.
How many times did you have to design it to get it right? Did you hit it out of the park on the first one, or did it take a bunch of iterations?
The first time on the mechanism worked right out of the box, but the chute itself took several attempts. Trying to get it small enough, what size material to use, what size cord to use or ribbon, all that mattered to make it too bulky or not. And so we had to play with that. And I had help from a guy named Paul Helms off of Hobby Squawk, who was instrumental and we collaborated just through personal private messages and made it work. And he's the one that kind of makes the chutes now. He's the chute expert, and I provide a short kit for the release mechanism. So
this is indicative of what I think makes it the golden age of RC aviation right now. Again, you've referred to Hobby Squawk, which synonymous with community, same with Tight Iron Aviation, where there's this huge pool of resources in which to gain some knowledge, some help, some skill, some tips and tricks from. Now, rewind 25 years ago, you're on an island by yourself with a Tower Hobbies catalog, just hoping, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you've got enough gumption to go to a club, I mean, I remember starting out and everybody says, go to a club, mentor with a veteran flyer. And that's definitely great advice, but not everybody does that. You got stage fright or whatever. So I just love, I call it the golden age of RC aviation right now, where there's so many resources out there. And again, Hobby Squawk Forums at Motion RC is a great place to, I always say, jump into the conversation there, because it's a good one. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's going to bring me to like my first question. And there's like 6 of them. So keep that in mind, and then take as long as you want on each one. And I'm going to kind of try to ping pong back and forth. For those of you who don't know who we're talking to right now, this is RC Jet Dude, Steve Hodges, and George Baker. What do we call you? The president of Tired Iron Aviation?
No, we don't have any. Excuse me, we don't have any officers.
No officers. He's the guy with the keys to the building.
Everybody, actually, we don't lock the building, but
he's the guy who should get keys to the building.
everybody is the boss here.
That's awesome. And before I get off track, while we were talking before with Steve, I was remembering. So Tired Iron. So George, you've been doing this what, 3 years?
No, I bought my first plane in January of 2016, and
okay.
it was just it was the Banana Hobby LX B25, and I just got it to hang up in the shop here. I like to have a few models, and I restored military vehicles and built hot rods and stuff. So it's really kind of an accident. I had a couple of control line planes when I was a kid, 12, 13 years old. Had the old Cox Stuka dive bomber, and before that I had the Curtis P40, and we ran them things until the motors quit. We ground them down, just slinging them around with the string, and but then fast forward for 40 years, and just bought a plane to hang up in the rafters, and thought, well, I'll get a radio and make it work, where I can open the bomb bay doors and stuff. And I actually had a little power supply rigged up to it, and I could turn my radio on, then turn that power supply on, and make the bomb bay doors open, wheels go up and down, propellers spin.
That's fun.
Well, it got old after about a week. And, this $300 Futaba radio sitting here. I thought, well, I'll just buy me a plane and teach myself how to fly. How hard can it be? So I did. I bought some Dyno stuff, and it's disposable. So I started with the PBY Catalina because I could take off the grass easy. And back then I didn't have a runway. I just had about 50 feet of mowed grass in the yard. And I taught myself how to fly with it, and I learned about foam tack right off the bat. And I've still got that Catalina. I can put a battery in it right now and go out there and fly.
I've seen him fly it. It's amazing.
Those are fun. What I just love everybody's story. But what I remember about George, I'm a guy who has spent plenty of time on the forums. George came kind of out of nowhere and hard and fast. And pretty soon he had a hangar. And I remember early on talking about, man, I want to hang out there. I want to go there to this place where guys hang out, fix each other's planes, talk about it, and it looks cool. And I mean, a runway in the backyard, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. So okay. So George, your first plane, you have a couple different origin stories, it sounds like. And you got to get off of that invisible Kool-Aid. Right now I can't see you at all. Okay. So your first plane on your second origin story was that B-25. Did you ever fly that thing? The one that you hung up?
Yeah, I fly it now, and I mean, I flew it probably about a year ago first on 4S, and it was pretty weak. So I got some 5S packs from Steve, and now it's really come alive. And I was talking to Brandon Moon. He helped me. He helped me big time. I got one of the silver FMS La Patron Tiger Cats.
Yes.
And it had a defective BC. And long story short, you know, it would act up after about 2 minutes of flight. And I got it down once. The second time I wasn't so fortunate, and it hit the ground and just destroyed it. But Brandon's like, you know what, those motors and props would be awesome on that B25. So that's where I'm headed with that. And
Nice.
but no, that thing, I mean, it hung up here in the shop for a long time. I bought that plane, you know, in January of 2016, but I didn't start flying anything. I had about 5 planes before I ever even started flying. The second plane I bought was the Flightline P-38, and remember, I jumped in there and I did the Oleo conversion. The first one I used, free wing P-51.
Yes.
Well, everybody was asking, you know, how's it do? How's it do? I'm like, that's real good rolling around on the table. So, you know, I was afraid to fly. You know, I just got the Catalina and started trying to fly it, and it was about 4 or 5 attempts with that thing before I ever got it to you know, even rotate long enough to make a circuit around the field. But man, the first time I got that thing up in the air and made 2 or 3 circuits around the field and landed back down, it was just like, man, it was so fun, you know, and just all the troubles of the day were gone. You know, I was just focused on that plane and trying to fly it. And now, you know, it's that same feeling. I mean, it's that same feeling, especially every time you fly something new that you haven't flown before. There's planes I believe I could fly around the field out here without even looking at them. You know, I know the routine so much, but you know, you get a new plane. It's like that new Mirage, the Tiger Me, with that hopped up motor in it. Man, that thing is just it's crazy.
Yeah, I'd like to try. I'd like to try one of those sometime.
Yeah, you've taken off and flung one, but you ought to land one. It's
You're right. I should. I really had fun with the first version of the Mirage, and it was no slouch either, by any stretch. I'm making sure yes, good. I'm still recording. So, Steve, what was your first airplane? You can go way back to the beginning, or first. I'm going to ask you both. So I want to know your very first one, and then your first like foamy one. So start where you want.
Good grief. I had a buddy who I used to fly with in high school, and we would build planes, all-nighters and stuff like that. And we did some control line stuff. But my first RC plane was probably along the lines of like a Sig Cadet or something like that. It, you know, built up, also covered with Monaco, you know, gas or plane. And so that's probably one of my first.
And that's in high school time.
Yeah, and I actually did have a foam plane back then. We flew a foam plane, and you know, it had the problem of, you know, it gets fuel logged and you can't keep it together and nothing will stick to it after a while and so forth. We never painted it or anything. We just learned to fly on it. But that was one of the planes that I actually clicked. I actually flew it. It looked like a Cessna, high wing, tricycle gear. And we were flying it one day and my buddy says, I don't have any directional control. It was just elevator rudder. And I said, so you can't make it turn? He said, no, it's just going, he could do loops and that was it. He said, get in the car because this thing's going to go somewhere. I'm going to try to keep it up in the air as much as possible, but we got to try to follow it. I tried to see if I could keep up with it, but couldn't. I ended up coming back and getting him. He says, well, it went this direction. Let's go that way and see if we can find it. We stopped at a church. And a guy was mowing the yard, asked him if he saw a plane come down anywhere nearby, a white airplane. And he pointed out to this wheat field. And we were just like, oh, you got to be kidding. And we started walking through that wheat field, and about the third pass, we found it. I could not believe it. We had no idea where that thing came down. But
that's amazing. It's hard enough to find one when you keep your eyes on it and it's going down close. Yeah. Let alone just like poking in the dark like that.
Yeah, we were shooting in the dark trying to ask this guy if he even saw anything. But anyway, but that was one of the first planes. I don't even remember the brand of it, but it was like an EPS styrofoam type plane. And I remember that. I later advanced into other things. My older brother, like I said, got into RC a little bit, but I ended up getting his equipment because he kind of didn't do much with it. And so I had the old AM Futaba radio with the round chrome gimbals, and it was just 4-channel. And I was just ecstatic to even have a radio, and I was putting stuff together. But it wasn't until I got out of high school that I really got going into it. And the Blue Angels came to our hometown, did an air show, and I flipped out and I went out and bought a Bob Violet A4 Skyhawk, ducted fan, and put that thing together. It took me like a year. I actually flew it. Our local hobby shop owner actually did the maiden on it. Radio technology was not what it is today. It had glitches at high throttle. There was all kinds of problems with it, but we flew it. And that I remember to this day, when the A4 came out, the Motion put out, I was just jumping up and down with joy because I wanted to do another one just like I had done. Yes. And ended up doing my Blue Angel as well, because I never did get to do my Blue Angel back then. So, I get to be that A4 Skyhawk pilot or that Blue Angel pilot. That's how I kind of see it. Yeah. But my pilot is actually George in my Blue Angel. So he's just a lieutenant, but that'll be okay.
Well, your A4s look amazing. And whatever you did, George, you fixed the audio because I was reverbing for a minute. So second part of that same question, what was your first modern day foamy? What brought you back? We leave that story off with the Bob Violet, and then we jump right into the Motion A4. What was the bring you back into it somewhere there in the middle of that timeline? That's what
me personally, I got into helicopters around 82, 83 time frame. They were brand new, the dimension of not having to have a runway to fly them. I learned how to hover on an American RC Helicopters Mantis until I wore that thing out. And then I went and bought a GMP competitor, 50 size competitor. It was one hanging up in the hobby store. Had collective pitch, no gyro, nothing like it. It was squirrely as all get out. But I flew that thing. I learned more about that. And I did helicopters until about 91, 92. I actually competed in 1990 and 1991 at Nationals. And then as I got to the point where I couldn't keep up with the Joneses, and I kind of lost interest altogether.
Yeah.
And so I got out of it.
Did it begin to advance so fast at that point, or what?
That was part of it. The radio technology with the computer radios, they were coming out, and they were expensive at the time, and I just couldn't keep up with the level of competition because I was advancing through the ranks, and I needed to compete against these experts that were just, there's no way. I couldn't practice enough. I didn't have the equipment, no sponsors or anything like that like they had. So I just kind of got out of it. And wasn't until about 2015 or so that I got back into it again. And my first plane when I got back into it was an Apprentice S. I just wanted something that would be easy to fly because I was like, I don't know how good I'm going to do at this. It's been years. And took it off, flew it around. It was like riding a bike. Landed it, no problem. And so I immediately jumped on a Banana Hobby A10, 70 millimeter twin A10. And that was a lesson learned.
I was going to ask. I kind of assumed that might not go well.
It was very nose heavy when I tried to fly it, and needless to say, it had problems that it had a short lifespan. But I learned something from it.
Yeah.
And so from there, I think I bought the 1700 millimeter FMS Corsair. And my first flight on it, I duffed it on the landing because it ballooned up after I hit the flaps and stalled it. And I learned something from that. and it just progressed from there. But
Right.
I've always gravitated toward the jets. I've always enjoyed that. And with the foamies and the EDF technologies of today, you're able to fly a jet, 20 years ago never existed. Didn't even have a chance for that. So it just blew me away how much it had changed from then till now. And so many cool models to choose from as a result.
Amazing. And back to your little second trajectory there, because of your prior experience, you felt pretty confident, like I'm guessing, like going, because you went from an apprentice S. I mean, if you heard anybody else tell you this story, you would almost laugh, right?
Yeah.
Like you got, I'm not being mean, I hope it doesn't come off that way. But I think it speaks to your experience you had prior, where you probably felt really good on that apprentice S, and then your heart's in jets. Like you go for an A-10 right away and it teaches you a lesson, but you still got a big set. And so you go for a 1700 millimeter Corsair next. I mean, there's some street cred right there.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, sometimes you learn the hard way. And I was one of those guys that would learn the hard way.
I get it. Me too. I never had it. I'll speak briefly on my first plane. Come trying to keep things whittled a little bit of order. So I don't have a pre-story. Once I started models, I haven't stopped since, but I haven't been doing it 10 years yet, even now.
Okay.
So crazy, right? So I came in, well, I'll say this. When I was a little kid, I wanted to get a model, and I opened up a box, and there was a bunch of sticks and a roll of covering, and I was like, forget it, right? I was a little kid. It just wasn't going to happen. And I'm Generation X right now, right? You ever see that movie, Willy Wonka? She Wants It Right Now, Daddy?
Yeah.
Man, not that I was awful, but man, if I couldn't just go for it right away, it wasn't happening. And then all that time and investment, you don't even know if it's going to work. I got to get an engine. I got to get a radio. I'm a little kid. I got like a paper route. There's no way. So I put it on the shelf forever. Never really thought about it, but grew up in the backseat of a full-scale T6. So, I mean, the aviation thing's definitely in my blood, but the model thing, I never really got there. So it must have been, I'm guessing, 2009. I think that's probably my start date on RC Groups or something. And I'm certain I probably got an account there a few months after getting bit by the bug altogether. But my dad bought the Wing Dragon. It was an Arctec Wing Dragon. It's a high wing pusher prop, had a foam wing, carbon or plastic boom, and some, injection molded, blow molded fumes.
Mm-hmm.
Depron, deli tray tail and rudder, ugly as sin. And I thought, because I grew up in the backseat of a T6, that I knew something just by vicariously from being around it as a kid.
Yeah.
So I didn't follow the good advice that was given to me, and I got a P-47 for my first plane. And not only, this is going bad. Right? Not only was it a P-47, but it was the Guan Lee P-47, which anybody who remembers Banana Hobby back then was selling these 90% pre-assembled, perfect for beginner everything. It didn't matter if it was a jet, a warbird, a civvy plane. They all had the same description on the website. You could get them ready to fly for $85, 31 inches EPS foam. There was one servo that worked the ailerons, and it was a guitar string basically through the wing that never returned to neutral. Nickel metal batteries, brushed gearbox, and the manual was no good. And I had no experience. So let me just put it this way to keep it short and moving along. By the time I was on my third one, I got it to stay up for more than 5 seconds. So that my learning curve was basically by myself going from, and the technology is changing right as I get into the hobby. It's going to LiPo batteries and they were calling it direct drive, brushless motors.
Yeah.
Instead of brushed. So this was right then was all happening. So I was still getting planes that had the brush systems, but once I discovered LiPo, and it seemed like everything I was trying to fly needed some nose weight. So the 2200 3S battery was, to me at the time, a monster, right? And it was a monster investment too, because I didn't know where to source stuff yet. And so I'm buying Thunder Power 2200 3S batteries at the hobby shop for twice as much money as it should be. And man, I just thought that was something else. But so I went from the brush technology to brushless, and I would have that third P47, again, 31 inches EPS foam. Remember the GWS slow stick? Anybody? Some of you do, I'm sure. Well, it came with the dihedral tube and then some carbon fiber that went on the front of their Depron wings. So I took that and dug it into the Thunderbolt because I was adding a 2200. I was adding a brushless motor, and that son of a gun would go so fast that the wings would flutter. And if I slowed it down and just tooled around, I'd go 15 minutes. George is going to sleep. So that was my first thing. So we're going to move along since dude's falling asleep on me.
He's just picking at you.
So if I would crash, here's the funny thing there too. It's like I didn't know about CA yet or nothing. So when I crashed that thing, which I did every time.
California?
What's that?
California?
I would use like regular, like Elmer's glue and straight pins and have to wait forever for stuff to dry. I didn't know about CG yet. But my dad had that Wing Dragon. And so I'd crash mine in 3 seconds. Back then I didn't know about CG or nothing. I mean, the manual was no good. I put the battery under the pilot. I thought that's where the weight should be, right? Guys at least 170 pounds. Maybe I should put the battery under where the pilot goes to be like the real thing. I was completely wrong about everything on that plane. And I said it on the RC After Hours the other day. I mean, every time somebody opened the garage door or cooked a bag of popcorn, that 27 megahertz radio would freak out. But the best part about the whole thing was doing it with my dad. He had the Wing Dragon, and so after I'd crashed mine, he had his. And it was a high wing glider deal. I never had any trouble on that thing. So I would, even though I killed my stuff, I'd always still leave having had a flight. And once I finally got smart, I got a GWS slow stick. It's like those ugly sticks you see, but super under camber, super light. You could fly them in anything. And as ugly as they were great to learn on, just orientation and muscle memory and things like that. And you couldn't hardly upset them.
Yeah.
So after that, I went to the GWS EPO planes, which were like, at the time, huge foamies, 39-inch wingspan. I mean, goodness sakes. 39 inches, for goodness sakes. And you never went with the landing gear on them because they were just coat hanger. And I was flying at soccer fields. The belly landing was the way to go. You'd buy they called them either you could buy a slope kit or no power system kit. These things came, they were all white. And you would have to paint them up yourself and install the blind nuts, and much like anything Wind Rider, if anybody's ever built anything like that. But that's my beginning story. And after that, I've just gone nuts ever since. I mean, a year and a half into it, I started magazine stuff, and here we are now. So enough about me. Now, my next question. Out of all the planes you've flown in your time, you've got to have a favorite. Just favorite. Not depending on, not conditions, not windy, not whatever, just favorite.
Personally, my favorite is probably the F4, the Phantom.
Nice.
That or the A10. It's a toss up.
It's tough.
They're both fantastic planes.
These are tough questions. Why I like them. George, what's your favorite? Right. Let's just say favorite period of all time.
Well, I can't do that. I don't.
He has too many.
I don't have a favorite. I mean, I love all my planes.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I have one plane I don't love, and I still have it though. It's hanging up in the rafters. It doesn't fly anymore, but I hated it when I crashed it. I was like, yes, I hate you. You know? But,
Can you tell me what it is?
I'm not going to. I'll tell you in person, but I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Okay.
We might have some sponsors online right now, but or might.
Well, they're big boys.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna do it. You know, you wouldn't do it the other day on RC After Hours, but no,
Yeah.
really, it just wasn't a very good flying plane. But you know, I never did really like the looks of the plane either.
Sure.
I want to tell you what it is, but you know, I guess if I had to say a plane that I just really enjoy flying, not that I mean, I love all my, but the B-17s. I mean, I love my jets. I've got a few jets now, and
You're welcome.
yeah, I wasn't going to get into jets. Now I've got about 30 of them. I love them. But
They're addictive.
yeah, they are. Well, all of them are addictive.
Yes.
But the B-17s and the Flightline B-24s, man, I just love flying those bombers. I've got one B-17 that I made the ball turret, the top turret turn on them. And then on the ball turret, I put an FPV camera in it. And when there's a bunch of kids over, we've got all kinds of FPV goggles and stuff. And we'll put the goggles on those kids and let them ride in the B-17 ball turret, you know. And I'm moving it down so they can see straight down, or they can look behind me and Dieter or somebody will be chasing me in a quad shooting video. And, you know, it's just, you know, getting back to, you know, the camaraderie and the fellowship we have. I mean, at the end of the night, after a 3-day fly-in, you know, we'll start at lunchtime on Friday, and Steve will come over and he'll bring, you know, half a dozen of the kids or something. You know, he can't fit them all in the car. He brought them all one time, but 2 of them had to ride on the luggage rack of the minivan.
That's why I got a trailer.
Yeah, I got a trailer, but, you know, I can't breathe inside of it. But,
Yeah. So I definitely know that's a loaded question because I have the hardest time trying to answer that one myself, but I feel like you have to ask it. Now, I have some other questions that I'd like to rapid fire, and I think they're easier to answer because you either tell the truth or you don't.
yeah.
So B-17 is a good favorite for you. Notice I'm skipping right to the next question rather than answering it myself as well.
Yeah.
For me, I'll try to answer the
It's
favorite.
not about you.
Well, but I'm going to tell you anyway. It might kind of be a little bit. So my favorite is usually the one that's currently kind of in my face. I'm loving the F-4 right now. But if I think back, there's something I like about so many. It is a very hard question to
Yeah. It is.
answer. My favorite is the one I don't have yet a lot of times. Like I can't wait to, you know, get the next one. So, okay. Now here's one you can't fudge on. The last one you flew. You can't lie. What was it doesn't matter. What was the last one that you took up?
The last
Go.
one that I flew was I flew two different planes today. It was real windy when I got home from work, and I flew that little yellow and white Cub, you know, the GPS Cub, I call it. And I was flying it, aggravating the horses down the field. And,
Your rain plane.
my rain plane, yeah.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Sport Cub, right?
Yeah, you know what's funny? It's got a broke motor mount, and when you turn right, the motor, it turns right even more. And that thing will just almost spin on the dime. It's really cool. I'd like to, I might make a servo where I can actually do that. But
Thrust vectoring on the Cub, man.
yeah,
That's awesome.
plus vectoring. But the
Those are
last
great.
one I flew was the FMS Vortec, and I really like that thing. It's a good looking plane.
Yeah, it presents really big. I mean, people hardly believe it when you look at the specs that it's only 1,400, because in
Yeah.
person it looks way bigger.
Yeah, I think 1443 or something, and I was thinking it's 1,700 millimeter for some reason. It just looks gigantic. But you know, I'm not a 3D guy, but I like fiddling and playing with it a little bit.
Yeah.
3D stuff. And so that was the last one I flew.
Steve, what about you? What was the last one you flew?
Well, earlier this evening, our club in Asheville had a grilling and chilling event where we got together and flew, and I grilled hot dogs for everybody. And I took the E-Flight Cherokee out and maidened it. So that's what I flew last. So
let's talk about that one a little bit. So I'm going to answer the question too because it's easy. So I went out last night and I flew. The last things I flew the 262. The new scheme, which is fantastic, free wing 262. And then I flew the Piper Cherokee. It was getting dark. I think I told George today or last night, now don't anybody at home do this because I was pushing it, but I got 13 and a half minutes out of a 2600 3S battery on
really?
That son of a gun. And I was just shooting landings. I mean, I'm not flying that one to go crazy, but I got the bind and fly for workups from Motion. And so we did the build, and we still have to do the flight review. But I've flown a handful of planes at this point. I'm, in particular, pretty fond of that one. So that was the last one I flew. You maidened it. Did you fly it any more, or was that the only flight you got on it so far?
I got 2 flights on it, the maiden and another one, and I'm running a 3200 milliamp 3-cell in it. I got some 4-cell 2500 milliamp packs, and I can't even imagine that thing on 4-cell. But
yeah,
I mean, I was flying it most of the time at half throttle, just puttering around, and it had plenty of power.
Yeah.
But I was having kind of a hard time. We had a little bit of a crosswind, and there was a storm brewing, and so it was kind of getting buffeted around a bit. But I was having some difficulty gauging the landings and with the flaps and stuff, trying to get it to settle in. It needs some more trim on it. Need a lot of down trim, but anyway.
I think that plane needs, a lot of planes can do this. If it doesn't have, for me, CG only matters in approach. I don't care about what I need to fly it upside down or, I want to be able to get in the power and it fly level. But CG, I want it to, if I'm out of the power, I want it to follow its nose in a downward slope, a nice glide path.
Yeah.
So when I flew it the first time, I always default to nose heavy, and I had the battery up there pretty far forward. And I had to trim it up a bunch. Actually, I ran out of all my up trim, but then it was perfect. And coming in on approach, it's definitely predictable, following its nose, stick it monkey pants. And then, of course, I wanted to take that trim back out and neutralize, again, my radio and everything. So I think I went the other way too far. And I ended up flying where on approach, man, the nose was, it was like it didn't want to come down at all. It's just like floating forever. It's like you can't get it slow enough to ever descend. So I think with that one, not nose heavy, but nose forward on CG, and you'll have a better time. Because I think if that thing is sorted, it's a heck of a flyer. I know I surprised some guys who think I'm only jet or fast stuff or whatever, but man, I've had a blast on that Cherokee, and you will too. And you know where to get it? MotionRC.com. Okay. Here's a good one for you. George, I don't know if I want to ask you this one. Last one you fixed. It might have been one of mine.
Last one I fixed.
Last one you fixed. These are the best questions in the world. Me and my team developed them over months and months of hard, intense scrutiny and research. Yeah, that looks familiar.
Yeah. This is the last one I fixed. And, it turned out really well. There's a little shade difference right here between the two sections. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's got a little, this wing, this part right here was gone.
And the best part about that crash is even after that crash, my ego walked away without a scratch.
Yeah, You can crash your plane in here. I don't think.
We can joke about it. I love it. So that's the last one you fixed. I thought that might be your answer with one of mine. Steve, what was the last one you fixed?
It's here lately. I've been fixing planes for the kids because my youngest and one of my other boys are trying to do the everyday flight challenge for a year.
Oh yeah.
So I'm fixing little UMX Sport Cubs or T-28 Trojans or Timbers. One of them has a UMX Timber, and we had a kind of a demo event in a sports park in Asheville this last Saturday, and my son was flying his little Timber and got tangled up with one of the full-size Timbers, one of the bigger Timbers. So it was when Timbers collide, and guess which one lost? It was his.
Yeah.
But it chewed up one of the wingtips. He still landed it fine, but it caused me to order a new wing, and I just got it today. So I'm going to be repairing that here. I started working on it tonight. I didn't quite get it done, but that's the project at hand, to try to get that fixed so he can keep flying.
All right. So that's the last one you fixed. But okay, I'll just ask it again. What's the last one you fixed for you?
For me?
Yeah.
Gee whiz. Let me look. Probably my Hawk. My 70 millimeter Hawk. That's been a plane that I love to fly. It's just fun. It's just a fun flying plane. It's fast. It's got a lot of power. And I had a mishap landing at George's, and it hopped sideways on me, and it popped right behind the intake ducts. There's a seam there. You're familiar with it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it popped right there, so I had to fix that back together. But it wasn't a bad, it wasn't a crash. I mean, the last plane I had crash like George got the Mirage, I gave to George. I brought it to his place in a bag.
The J10?
The J10. He took a look at it and said, I can fix that. And I said, have at it, dude. I ain't going to touch it.
That's awesome.
But no, that's probably the Hawk was the last one I fixed of mine that I had to do anything major on.
Good. All right, we're getting there, guys. And I'm not going to just hit stop at an hour, but we're getting close. I think we're going to be wrapped up in the next 15 minutes, if you'll stick with me.
Not a problem.
And everybody at the Tired Iron Aviation page who's hanging out, if you don't watch it right now, you'll watch it or listen to it later. Go ahead and leave comments and questions or ideas on that post, because we'll be checking it out. I'd like to see what you have to say, even if you weren't on for the live. I appreciate your attention. So thank you. So now I've got really two more questions left that I intend to ask anybody who's on the show every time. I think these are great. It doesn't have to be long-winded either, if it can be. What do you wish would be made? What's not out or in the works? Because we can't obviously go there on anything not out yet. But what do you wish would be made? What would you like to see?
Well, I would have to say, number one, if I could twist Alpha's arm, I would say the OV10. And then I have to say number two is the the CU-123. That's the one that was in the second flight of the Phoenix.
I'm not sure.
Help me, Steve.
I know the one you're talking about, flying boxcar, right?
Yeah, flying boxcar.
Oh, yeah. It's like a Venom, but props.
Yeah.
It looks a little bit, for a flying boxcar, it's kind of streamlined looking.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's a big,
or am I thinking of the 119?
Maybe that's
it.
It's a little bit bigger, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, those are good. Some of those seem inevitable. It's just a matter of when. It sounds like some of that. Sometimes
No.
stuff is so far out that it's just I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well,
Well,
OV10, you know, the OV10, you've got everything you need for it. You've got the suspension struts from the T45 would be perfect for it, and the power system and motors, you know, all that out of the Tiger Cat P38 would work perfect in it. Twin boom. I mean, what's not to like about an OV10? I'd order 2 the first day of the pre-order.
So George likes an OV10. I cut out a little bit. I had to restart the track on my end, but you'll be fine over there. OV10, yes, we do already have everything for it, really, if you think about it, in the way of Flightline offerings.
Right.
What about you, Steve? What do you wish you could see?
I have 2 things. One, as far as prop plane, I would love to see a large C-130. I would love to have a Spooky or a Spectre or something like that made by Flightline, maybe, you know, something really nice. And as far as a jet is concerned, I mean, anything is fine. I'm kind of interested maybe in, I like some of the more modern jets. I think it would be neat to see some of those. F-35, F-22, things like that. I'm trying to scratch build an F-117. So you just don't see them. And I want to try to make one that, you know, something that nobody has. But Motion's making it real hard on me to get that finished because they keep coming out with stuff I want.
Exactly.
But,
All right. So that takes me to my last question. So out of the thing, I mean, you guys may be the wrong dudes to ask, but out of what's available now on the market currently, what would you, if you had to buy a plane tomorrow with what's out there now, what would you get
oh boy.
that you don't have already or that you would want to have? What's left that after, you know, you guys must have it all between the both of you, but what's next? What would you get that's out there now? If you weren't pining and waiting for a next offering, what would you get?
I know for me, I've wanted for some time a Eurofighter, but it always keeps taking a back burner to other things that come out.
Yeah.
But either they're not in stock when I have the money, or, you know, something else comes along when they are in stock that I go after. But yeah, I've always kind of wanted one of the Eurofighters.
Those are neat. Those are neat. They are. What about you, George? What would you get?
Well, I don't know. I mean, yeah, between Steve and I, we've got about everything, you know, that's current stuff. And I was just looking around. You know, I'm not really sure. Yeah, that's a hard question.
It is.
Yeah, I would have to. I'd have to go out and shop a little bit. I guess. Yeah, I don't know. That's
We'll
kinda
come
hard.
back. Hey, we'll come back to you next time on that one then.
Yeah, I stay pretty up to date on everything that's out there, but
The stuff
now,
that I want it's been out for a minute at this point. You know
I know what it is. I know what I like to have,
what's that?
and I hate to say this, all the motion guys hold your ears, but that new Albatross that Hobby King just
Oh yeah,
teased.
yeah, that seaplane, right?
Yeah.
It's a Grumman
yeah.
Albatross. Yeah,
Yeah, that's something that the you know, the industry really needed. That's going to be a good offering. That's one I'll have to have at least 1 or 2 of those.
nice.
Those are nice.
Nice. Good answer. So for me, I kind of want an F-15. You know, I want an F-15. I've had my hands on the sticks like once. I kind of would like an F14, and I kind of want the Venom. But if I had to pick out of those three, I guess I'd go F15 right now with stuff that's out there. I think that's my answer. So with that, guys, we've made it an hour. I want to thank everybody for coming by. You guys have anything to add? I'm going to wrap this thing up, I think. We're just getting started. George, you've been super helpful today, and I wanted to just get one off that I felt good about releasing. You know, I've been doing some practice runs and things, but I appreciate your help very much on getting this one where I like this. I'm not sure this is how we'll always do it, but this works to get it out there, and I think that's great. So I want to invite everybody who's listening to hit me up anywhere and ask questions or give me ideas. You can also right under the post at Tired Iron Aviation, put your comments and questions if you'd like. I'm going to see them very quickly if you DM me on Instagram. And this is about social media and connecting. George, you're doing a great job of doing it one-on-one, person to person. I'm kind of on my own island, so I rely on the computer to do it for me. I mean, you guys know me. We're all friends, and we've all met, but it's so amazing when I go to a show or an event and folks know me, and I know them through social, and it's only because of engaging and keeping tabs on each other through, you know, either video or social media platforms. So it's real for me, so don't think that it's not. I love connecting and engaging with all you guys on social, and anybody who's ever asked me questions in the past knows they're probably sorry they called, because they're going to lose a half hour or so of their day. Because I will talk to you about airplanes, no problem. And that's what we're going to do here at RC Pilots Lounge. We'll get Mike wrangled into this one of these days. George and Steve, thank you so much for being my first guest on here. I'll definitely be having you back, and I know you're going to help spread the word. And this isn't all about just you know, internet famous dudes like yourselves. We're going to get anybody story they want to tell on here, and be prepared, because those questions I asked, I think unless we run over, everybody's going to get them. So with that, thanks for coming over. Those of you who are listening on Anchor, favorite the podcast, give it an applause button if you like it. Do the same thing on these other socials where it's going to be on Facebook. Just engage with it. Tell us what you think. And we're going to aim to get another one out as soon as we can. The hope is weekly, but we'll see how that goes, because I've got some equipment to round up and all that kind of thing. Thanks for your support, George and Steve and everybody who's listening. So proud to do it and glad to be here at RC Pilots Lounge, hanging out, talking about our favorite thing. See you guys on social. Until the next one. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Ryan.